everyone, welcome back. My name is Morgan. This is my channel Pisces Paperbacks, and today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up. I know this video is going up about a week into January, but I didn't want to push back my end of 2022 content to make room for this, so you're just gonna get this when you get this. This is also my second time trying to film this because when I did this a few hours earlier, this happened. I think there was just a car accident outside. So there was a 4-car pileup on my street, which is a very narrow, tiny street. It was an event. Nobody was hurt. It was mostly parked cars, but like, it was intense. So I took a break, went grocery shopping, and came back, and I'm starting over. I read 10 books in December, so it was a really good month for me considering the year that I had and how little I was reading during certain months. And it was, I think, 8 audiobooks and 2 ebooks, all from Library or Kindle Unlimited, and yeah, so let's just dive right into it. The first book I read in December was Bombshell by MacLean. This is my first book by this author, and I really enjoyed it. I thought the confessions of love at the end were really fun. I liked the characters. The plot was fine, but overall it was a satisfying historical romance that I rated probably 3.5, 3.75 stars. This book follows Cecily. Actually, the rest of her sisters were in a different series. She's not the youngest, but she's the first book in a different series. So there is some background information that happens in another book with one of her sisters. This book is about Cecily. She is wealthy, not old, but she's 30 in Regency England, and she's single, unmarried, which makes her definitely a spinster of the time. And there's a lot of scandal attached to her name, so much so that it's almost like there's none. There's so much rumors flying around about her that she can basically do what she wants with no repercussions because nobody really knows what's true and what's not. Cecily uses this reputation for the greater good when she and a group of other women in society use their power and positions of power to take down bad men. So generally this book follows Cecily and her group of friends as they're trying to take down this like Viscount, but the romance plot of this is that there is a man who is a very good friends with one of Cecily's older sisters. And so in that sister's book, you kind of get this little background. His name's Caleb Calhoun. He's an American who co-owns Cecily's sister's pub with her. And he is back in England after 2 years in the States. This is something I found very frustrating. A lot of the first half of the book is spent with both Caleb and Cecily referencing like what happened 2 years ago. And we really don't find out what happened. It's not really that important. It's not like there was a big event. It was basically just Cecily kind of came on to Caleb, and Caleb, instead of being like, yes, I'm interested, when he probably clearly was, fled the country back to America. And this book follows them as their paths cross again. They very clearly care about each other. That was probably my favorite part of this book, was like the yearning and the pining, especially on Caleb's end, because there's something in his past that leads him to believe that they can never be together. And it was really, really sweet. I really, really loved their confessions at the end. I thought the very end was a little stupid and over the top, but I really liked this one. Next, I read a short literary horror novella called We Had to Remove This Post by Hanna Bervoets, I believe. I also believe that this was translated from the Dutch. This is about a girl named Kaylee describing the year that she spent working as a content moderator for a large social network or like internet company. And basically she would spend 8 hours a day being shown extremely disturbing imagery and deciding whether or not it's too violent or sexual in certain ways to appear on the platform. While I didn't enjoy this book and probably would rate it 3 stars, I'm choosing not to rate this in kind of in protest of all the people who are rating it 3 stars, because when you go onto the Goodreads page for this, you'll see review after review after review of people being like, maybe I'm just like too fucked up to be scared by this because there's so many trigger warnings, but this book didn't scare me at all. And I feel like they're missing the point. It's not cool and edgy to be like, well, I can read all this really fucked up content and it doesn't mess with me. The whole point of the book is to address how being constantly exposed to this extremely violent, misogynistic, anti-Semitic, fascist rhetoric desensitizes you to it. Like, that's the fear of the whole book, is that you get desensitized and then you're unable to then readjust your own beliefs without also being involved with this violent imagery. And it just really bothers me that that's kind of the narrative around this. And I think maybe it has something to do with the English translation, because I found that a lot of the reviews that were in Dutch, like I couldn't read the reviews, but they had higher ratings than a lot of the English reviews that I was seeing. So I don't know. That's how I felt about that. I thought it was interesting. If you're interested, you should give it a listen. It's like a 3-hour audiobook, so I got through it very fast, and it also has a cool cover. But yeah, that book. I have feelings about it. The next book I read was Gallant by VE Schwab. This is her most recent release. It is a YA fantasy, and I'm just gonna read kind of a little bit of the synopsis on Goodreads. Everything casts a shadow, even the world we live in, and as with every shadow, there is a place where it must touch, a seam where the shadow meets its source. So this is about Olivia Pryor. She's a girl living in a home for orphans, basically, and she is mute. She's not deaf, but she's mute, and she communicates with sign language. And one day she receives a letter from family saying, "We've missed you so much. Your place is with us. Please come to our family home, an estate called Gallant." But when she arrives, nobody's expecting her, and her cousin actually demands that she leaves. Instead of leaving, Olivia is basically determined to unravel the secrets of Gallant and why her family has been drawn to this estate for generations. And while the writing is beautiful, V. Schwab always writes very poetically and descriptively, I found this book pretty average. I don't know. I gave it a 3-star. I liked Olivia. I really struggled with this book because there's not a lot of character interactions. She is mute, which is fine. Most of the book is her internal monologue. I can get behind that. The problem for me is that she can barely interact with other characters because they either don't know sign language, or the one character that does oftentimes purposely turns her back on her, or turns his back on her, in order to avoid difficult conversations that would move the plot forward. And it was really frustrating to me. I was just left unfulfilled. And I think I need to take a break from V. Schwab. I've read 6 of her books now, and I only really loved one of them. And that was the middle grade book, The City of Ghosts, the first in the Cassidy Blake series. And I just think that maybe she's just not the author for me. And that's okay, but I just need to take a break from V. Schwab. I will come back to her in a few years if I feel like I'm ready. Then I kind of entered a witchy romance moment, and I read 2 back-to-back. So first I read Go Hex Yourself by Jessica Clare. This is a Raylo inspired. Their names are Ben and Reggie. Witchy romance where Reggie is not a witch, but she answers an ad in the paper to become an assistant for this mysterious person. And when she gets the job, she kind of basically thinks she's going to be a live-in assistant for a senile old lady. She's kind of taken into this magical world that she doesn't really believe in. And then there's Ben, who is the nephew of this old lady, and he really doesn't like Reggie. He thinks she's not qualified, she's going to embarrass his aunt, and he just doesn't really like her, but he hates that he thinks she's so cute. And that is kind of the setup. Something happens to the aunt and they have to kind of work together to figure out what happens. It was very cute. On my spreadsheet I gave it 4 stars, but honestly it's probably more of a 3.5. It was fun. I think the sex scenes were really good, but overall I just think it was a little meandering, a little plotless. And I think that it was just a little too cutesy in some places, but I really enjoyed the world building. I think there's a second book coming out later this year. I'm definitely interested to read it, and I would recommend this if you like a contemporary witchy romance. I don't think there's anything really wrong with this at all. It was fun. Then I read From Bad to Cursed by Lana Harper. So this is actually a sequel witchy romance. The first book in this was Payback's a Witch, which I don't know if I ever actually did a dedicated review for. When I first read them, I read Payback's a Witch and The X-Hex really close to each other, and I was going to do like a compare and contrast double review video, and I never did. Then I didn't make a video for a year. But I actually do want to make a dedicated review for this book. If you didn't read Payback's a Witch, which is the first book in the Witches of Thistle Grove series, the setup is kind of that there is this cute Midwestern town that was founded by 4 very powerful witches. And now, hundreds of years later, their families, the descendants of those 4 witches, those families kind of run the magical scene in this town, and they draw power from like the local lake and stuff. And in the first book, we are introduced to Issa. She is the cousin of the love interest in the first one. She is part of the Abramov family. They work with necromancy, death magic, spirit magic, and she kind of has this rivalry with Rowan Thorne, I think his last name is Thorne, I don't know, but he and his family are the nature magic, the life magic. They own an orchard, they own a restaurant, stuff like that. The plot really kicks off when there is a magical event that is abruptly ended by a very bad curse attacking one of the participants, and the curse is of Abramov family origins. So the elders decide that in order to investigate, they're going to appoint one of the children of the elders, so Rowan, the life magic guy, and in order to prevent bias, just to prevent people from just assuming that one of the Abramov witches did cast this curse, they send Issa to kind of partner investigate with Rowan, and that is kind of where they go from. I definitely am going to make a dedicated solo review for this book, but I will say that I liked the plot well enough, the characters were fine. As a romance, it felt lackluster, it felt a little paint by numbers. I do think that has something to do with the fact that it is a single POV, you only get the book from Issa's perspective, and I just thought it was fine. The plot was fine, the mystery was interesting, but in terms of it being a compelling romance, it was just fine. I gave it 3 stars. Up next, I read Heartbreaker by Sarah MacLean. This is the second book in that series that started with Bombshell. I talked about it a bit in my holiday weekend reading vlog. So this book is the one where this group of women is given the name Hell's Bells kind of by the press. And in this book, Adelaide is the star. She is the thief, the con woman. She comes from a very different background to Cecily, and she is notably plain. She is not very noticeable. People don't pay attention to her, and she can kind of get by almost invisibly. And this book is about her romance with the Duke of Claiborne, who absolutely does not think she's invisible. This book is also really fun. It starts off with a really cool scene where she is infiltrating the headquarters of a gang in South London and stealing something from the desk of the boss. And as she's leaving, she runs into the Duke of Claiborne, who is also there to steal something from him. And they kind of get into it and get into a fight with the gang members, and then have like a passionate kiss on the docks before she's like, peace, and jumps onto a boat passing by at the exact correct minute for her to meet with her friends who are on that boat. It was very fun. And the plot of this book is basically through a series of events. They are both, Adelaide and the Duke of Claiborne, racing to get to Gretna Green to save, like keep going or stop a marriage between his brother and a woman that she and her group of friends are trying to help. They both have their motivations. It's kind of a road trip book, but halfway through, it really takes like a turn, and it's very fun, it's very interesting. It's definitely over the top. That is my number one note for this book, is that it was very over the top, but it was really fun. I didn't like the end as much. I thought that like the love confessions were just not as satisfying and like heart aching as in Bombshell, but I think I like the plot more. It was more exciting. I gave this book like 4 stars as well. Up next, I read The Lost Girls by Sonia Hartl. I also talked about this in my holiday weekend reading vlog, and this is a YA paranormal that's kind of John Tucker Must Die meets Twilight. The whole premise is, what if you did fall in love with a vampire when you were 16, and then he turns you into a vampire, and then now, decades later, he's dumped you, but you're a teenager forever. So this book is about Holly. She fell in love with Elton when she was 16 in 1987, and now 30 years later, he's broken up with her and gone back to the town where he met her in order to find another girl to fall in love with. She didn't know about this. She thought she was his only love, and she's then approached by 2 other girls who are like, he did the same thing to us, and we need to make sure he doesn't do this to someone else. And it is about that. It's about Holly's budding relationship with Parker, the human girl that Elton has now set his sights on. I was very hopeful that I would like this book. I had seen it on Twitter like forever ago, and it has a great cover, and I just thought it was shallow. It was kind of cheesy, and not shallow in ideas, but shallow in the building of the relationships. There was a lot of talk from Holly's like inner monologue about how she had felt very in the wind since Elton left her, and she was so happy to have found a home, a place where she could be herself with Rose and Ida, the two other vampires that she becomes friends with and she like moves in with. And it just felt very sudden. She was especially saying this stuff after only knowing them for like a week, and it just felt very rushed. And I think her relationship with Parker also felt very rushed. I'm hesitant to say that it might actually just be a reference to how quickly vampire romances like Twilight move in real life, because something that I would have been like, it's a criticism, was like they have like 3 conversations and then they're like, I'm in love with you. But that's very true to Twilight. And it's fun to see all those cultural references about modern vampires in this book. Those things were fun. If you're interested and you like YA more than I do, I've been struggling with YA lately, I think you should maybe give this a try. Because it was fun and it is vampires, which is like always a good time. But I gave this book like 2.5 stars. Then I had a little Kindle Unlimited moment and I read The Orc from the Office by Kate Pryor. This is a monster romance from Kindle Unlimited about Janice and Kent. And Janice is in HR at Evil Incorporated, and she accidentally elbows Kent, an orc from IT, in the face and breaks his nose. And basically, she has accidentally begun the blood fever, which is a part of an orc mating ritual where that begins upon first blood drawn. And it kind of starts, and they're told by HR, the blood fever will run its course, just stay separate, don't try to, interact that much. And instead of doing that, they start hooking up, and it's very sweet. Honestly, Kent is very nervous and shy. He's very introverted, and he was very sweet. He was absolutely my favorite of the 2 characters. Janice is a little more annoying, and we do only get her perspective, which is a little disappointing, but I thought this book was really fun. I did have a little bit of an issue because they do have a sexual encounter, not full like penetrative sex, but they do have a sexual encounter in the very beginning of the book before Janice knows that the blood fever is what's happening, and that's why she feels so compelled toward Kent. And I did feel a bit uncomfortable about that. By the end of the book, I was convinced of their relationship, so it didn't affect my experience too much. There is also, if you're reading the Kindle Unlimited book, there is just like in the middle, like explicit fan art, like not fan art, but there is like a not safe for work artist rendering of one of the scenes in the middle of the book. Just warning if you're reading this in public. I gave it 3.5 stars, but like a much more positive 3.5 stars than other books in this list that I've given 3.5 stars. Up next, I read Cheer Up, Love and Pom-Poms by Crystal Fraser, and this is an adorable YA graphic novel about 2 girls on a cheerleading squad. One of them's named BB, and I don't remember the other one's name, but I think it starts with an A. Basically, not BB, the other one, she is backed into a corner into joining the cheerleading squad when her guidance counselor is like, you have good grades, but you have no extracurriculars and you don't get along with anybody. You need to do something to help your college applications. And so she used to be friends with BB, and BB goes to bat for her and gets her onto the cheerleading squad. So this book is about friendship and the group supporting each other and learning about each other. It's also very much about the 2 girls rebuilding their friendship and then kind of a relationship blossoming out of that. And then a lot of the book is also about BB's experience as a trans girl about a year after coming out and how people treat her and how she wants to be treated. And it was just so lovely, so wonderful. I wish it was longer, and I wish there was a sequel. So I really recommend this. I give it 4.5 stars. And last but not least, my final book of 2022, I read A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I listened to the audiobook on the 31st while I was walking around, cleaning my house, doing stuff around the apartment, and I enjoyed it. So this book is the story of Dracula's first wife. Dracula, the name, is never said in this story, but that's kind of like the implication. He is an ancient, powerful vampire. And so he creates Constanza, the first wife, to be his devoted wife. And it follows them throughout the hundreds of years of their marriage and the other spouses that the husband vampire brings into their relationship. It is a polyamorous gothic horror romance more on the gothic side than the romance side, although Constanza's love for her sister, Magdalena, and the other wives is the driving force, and her very toxic love with her husband, who is abusive, is the driving force of the novel. I thought it was beautifully written, very compelling. I unfortunately didn't love it as much as everyone else did. I really liked it. I thought it was really good. I would definitely recommend it for people, but it wasn't something that I fell in love with like other people seem to have, which does make me sad. It does make me sad that my last book of the year wasn't a huge winner, but I did very much enjoy it, and I was very happy to have listened to it on the last day of the year. Okay, and I think that's it. Let me know what you read this month. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you guys soon. Bye!